Hello, I'm Letty, and welcome back to Beneath the Sandalwood Tree, where we dig up the secrets the powerful men want buried. You already know the drill. In a world where money is power, and power is absolute, most mobsters and dark kings get away with their crimes. But what about the ones who get caught? The question that should chill you to your core tonight isn't how a man like Dimaskanjeng Pribadi, a spiritual leader who promised to multiply fortunes, ended up ordering the brutal murder of his own followers, Ismail Hidayah and Abdul Gani, just to keep his massive fraud scheme silent. No, the real nightmare is this. When the man who had enough charm and darkness to convince his own disciples to kill for him walks free, what good is a justice system built only on chains and not on truth? The reservoir didn't keep the secret for long. The very next day, April 14, 2016, the nightmare was dragged into the light when a local found a body floating in the cold, vast expanse of the Gaja Munker Reservoir. The remains of the former chairman fished out and rushed to Dr. Mawardi Hospital in Surakarta. The autopsy confirmed the horrific, intimate details his killers had worked so hard to cover up. This wasn't an accident or a suicide, but a brutal, suffocating execution. The medical examiner's report stating the cause of death was asphyxia from a complete obstruction of the airways and savage pressure on the neck. For the family, it was the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. The realization that the man they saw every day, the father, the husband, didn't just walk away. He was brutally, purposefully suffocated by the very people he trusted, leaving her with the horrific, lifelong vision of his final, agonizing struggle for air. For 5 agonizing months, Abdul Gani's wife and children endured the uncertainty until the dedicated, methodical work of the police finally pieced together the fragments of evidence that the killers thought the reservoir had swallowed forever. The results of that intense 5-month investigation didn't just confirm a murder, they uncovered a calculated, systemic execution, a horrifying paper trail of deception and death that pointed directly to the top. The findings proved beyond doubt that Dimaskanjeng Pribadi, the king, the spiritual leader, the alleged miracle worker, was the intellectual actor, the cold-blooded puppet master who sat in his gilded cage and plotted the death of his own loyal chairman. It's the final, devastating blow for any woman who has ever invested her hope and trust in a powerful man, realizing he isn't just a fraud, but a monster who will destroy everything to protect his lie, turning a temple of faith into a burial ground for his own secrets. The capture of a cult king wasn't a sudden cinematic raid, but a quiet war of attrition led by Inspector General Anton Setyaji, a man who admitted the ugly truth. Taking Dimaskanjeng down was a near impossible feat, with the threat of armed conflict and mass casualties from his fanatical, brainwashed followers looming over every plan. Setyaji knew a public confrontation would only make the victims of this monster multiply, so for 2 grueling months, he sanctioned a meticulously detailed silent operation, a cold, calculated military strategy designed to neutralize the threat without a single shot fired, all to avoid turning a criminal case into a massacre. It's the ultimate confirmation of a tyrant's power, that the police can't just walk in and arrest him, but must instead plan a covert war simply because his followers are so terrifyingly loyal, they're willing to die for his lie. The final blow came in the small hours of Thursday, September 22, 2016. A massive force moving under the cover of darkness to the Patapocan in Probolinggo. This wasn't a police call. It was a military-grade invasion, a silent operation involving a staggering 1,200 police personnel, including units from the terrifying Mobile Brigade, and hundreds of reinforcements drawn from multiple regional precincts. The sheer scale of the operation, requiring a massive, multi-city deployment of force for a single man, confirmed the police knew exactly what kind of monster they were dealing with, proving that Dimaskanjeng wasn't just a con artist and a murderer, but a cult leader whose power was so absolute, so corrupting, that it took more than 1,000 armed officers to quietly drag him from the lair built on the backs and broken dreams of women like Abdul Gani's wife. Despite the overwhelming coordinated force of the 1,000+ officers, the arrest was anything but quiet. The 20-minute-long struggle began the instant the followers realized their king was being taken, their blind devotion erupting into animalistic rage as they turned on the police, hurling stones, not weapons of war, but desperate objects of frustration, at the tactical gear of the men who dared to touch their source of salvation. It's the sheer fanaticism that is the final, horrifying proof of Top Pribadi's power, the image of those desperate, cheated souls willing to fight a small army with just rocks to protect the monster who murdered their own kind. And while miraculously no one died in that brief, violent skirmish, the emotional carnage had already been done, ensuring that the wives and families of the true victims would never find peace knowing how many lives this one man's lie had permanently broken. The arrest was only the beginning. The sordid spectacle of the Patapocan's collapse quickly expanded, revealing that the foundation was built not just on murder, but on the systematic, massive money multiplication fraud, a scheme that had bled thousands of people dry. Justice was finally served on August 1, 2017, when the Cracksand District Court handed down an 18-year sentence for the murder and his other vile connections, a victory that should have felt final, yet was instantly tainted by the king's own theatrical defiance. Looking directly at the court, Dimaskanjeng, without a flicker of remorse, continued to declare his absolute innocence, denying any involvement in the death of Abdul Gani, confirming that the true power of a predator is his unwavering belief in his own lies, leaving the victim's family to face the horrifying truth. Even with a conviction, the monster still refuses to admit he took their man. Even the courts knew that 18 years wasn't enough to pay for the blood on his hands and the damage he did to thousands of trusting, hopeful souls. Just weeks after the murder conviction, on August 24, 2017, the Cracksand District Court tacked on an additional 2 years for the fraud, confirming that the supposed king was nothing more than a career criminal. This second conviction, which was instantly upheld by the Surabaya High Court, was the final, devastating legal punch that confirmed what every victim's wife already knew, that the man who promised miracles was a liar, a thief, and a murderer. It's the bitter ending to a dark romance. You realize the man you loved, the one who held all the power, didn't just break your heart, but systematically stole your future, proving his empire was built not on divine power, but on the cold, calculated manipulation of human hope. It didn't stop there, because a man like Dimaskanjeng wasn't satisfied with 1 or 2 counts of grand larceny. On January 29th, 2018, the gavel slammed down again, handing him yet another 3-year prison sentence for a completely separate new fraud case. A shocking reminder that even while facing 2 major convictions, he was already weaving more webs of deception behind the scenes. This relentless stream of sentencing, stacking years onto his life, wasn't just justice for the money he stole or the men he killed. It was the final, devastating portrait of the monster Abdul Gani had dedicated his life to, exposing the truth that the king's one true talent was the unyielding, bottomless capacity to lie, steal, and destroy, proving that some men will never stop taking until the cold bars of a prison cage force them to. The long, brutal dance with the judicial system finally reached its crescendo in February 2018, when the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, stepped in, reviewing the appeals filed by both the prosecution seeking a harsher penalty and the king demanding his freedom. But in a move of stunning finality, the Supreme Court rejected every single appeal, slamming the door shut on any escape route and upholding the full 18-year sentence for his role in the murder and the endless string of fraud cases. That rejection was the ultimate, non-negotiable end to his reign, confirming in a single, cold legal decree that the man who had promised to multiply fortunes could never multiply his freedom, leaving the widow of Abdul Gani with the only true justice available, the absolute, irrevocable knowledge that her husband's killer would pay for his crimes, with every single day of those 18 years serving as penance for the life he so ruthlessly stole. The verdict was final, but the ultimate cost was paid not by the king, but by the women left behind. Bibi Rasanjam, the widow of Ismail, stepped out of the spotlight after the Supreme Court ruling and simply declared her exhaustion, refusing to engage in any more public discussion or media scrutiny, because the brutal, drawn-out fight for justice had left her utterly drained. Her weariness was the real tragedy, confirming that even a final 18-year sentence couldn't restore the years of emotional turmoil, leaving the public to remember the case as a sensational, lurid scandal, a grotesque cocktail of fake spirituality, dizzying financial manipulation, and cold-blooded murder. The story of Abdul Gani and his colleague Ismail would forever be a cautionary tale for every woman, a stark reminder that when you marry into power, the price of the life he builds can easily become the cost of your own soul. The dark heart of the Padipokan's allure was always the promise of money multiplication, that supernatural claim luring followers, many of them desperate, hopeful people like Abdul Gani, to hand over their life savings, convinced they were just weeks away from a spectacular, easy fortune. But for every believer, there was a growing seed of doubt, a gnawing unease among those who started questioning the magic tricks, suspecting the hands under the robe were less divine and more criminal. The brutal, unsolved murder of Ismail Gani's predecessor and co-conspirator, was the true moment the illusion shattered, becoming the undeniable, bloody proof that this wasn't a spiritual game anymore. It was a ruthless operation where questioning the king didn't just cost you your investment, it cost you your life. A terrifying reality that sealed Gani's fate the moment he decided he couldn't keep the boss's secrets any longer. The ultimate, brutal takeaway from the entire dark saga wasn't a spiritual lesson, but a harsh, unforgiving decree etched in blood and betrayal. That no matter how desperate you are for a financial miracle, giving your absolute trust to a charismatic leader without demanding concrete evidence is nothing short of handing him the knife he'll eventually plunge into your back. This twisted case now stands as a monument to the terrifying power of a monster who weaponized faith, transforming genuine devotion into a tool for ruthless manipulation. But for the thousands of heartbroken followers, the wives who watched their savings vanish, the men who were mocked for their doubt, the heavy, final ring of the 18-year sentence was the only true antidote to their despair, a courtroom acknowledgement that their gnawing, gut-deep suspicion had been right all along. The entire sickening downfall of the king became a permanent, flashing neon sign in the collective consciousness, a raw reference point for the absolute extreme of religious manipulation, ensuring that the public would forever regard grand, supernatural claims, especially those wrapped in the tempting silk of material promise, with justified, icy suspicion. This final, fatal tragedy, steeped in betrayal and deceit, serves as a dark, unforgettable mirror for every woman who has ever been charmed by a controlling, magnetic man, screaming the truth that behind the facade of noble spirituality, behind the velvet robes and the quiet assurance of endless wealth, there can lurk the most depraved and lethal kind of evil, with utterly fatal human consequences for those who dare to step out of line. They tried to bury him for 18 years with a gavel and a judge's final word, but the grave wouldn't hold him. Barely a handful of years later, Taat Pribadi, the man known as Dimaskanjeng, the convicted killer and fraudster who orchestrated the suffocation of men like Abdul Gani, walked free on conditional release in April 2025. And in the most chilling, audacious act of defiance, he immediately returned to the Padepoken, taking his seat as its unchallenged leader once more. The system had locked him up, but it couldn't touch the devotion of his followers, leaving the world with the stomach-dropping reality that the monster who killed the honest man still commands a kingdom, proving that absolute power, once tasted, is a cancer that simply goes into remission. It never truly dies. They were his enforcers, his inner circle, the men who carried out the wet work for the king, and they faced their own brutal justice. With 5 of his loyal followers, Wayu Wijaya, Ahmad Suryono, Tukijan, Mishal Budianto, and Suwari, all convicted for the savage murder of Ismail Hidayah, receiving sentences that stretched from 10 to a devastating 20 years, proving that in this dark game of loyalty, the lowest men pay the highest price. But pay close attention to the names. Wayu Wijaya, who got a maximum of 20 years, and Ahmad Suryano, who got 10, were the same killers convicted in the separate murder of Abdul Gani, confirming that the boss had a dedicated, ruthless cleanup crew who were ready to murder anyone who threatened the illusion, which should chill every woman to realize that when you marry a monster, his loyalty to his kingdom will always be backed by the cold-blooded resolve of the hired help. The truth of Abdul Gani's final moments was laid bare in court, exposing the mechanical, cold-blooded efficiency of the murder. 4 of Dimaskanjeng's followers, Wahyu Wijaya, Wahyudi, Kurniadi, and Ahmed Suryono, were all convicted for carrying out the boss's command, with the court delivering harsh sentences of 20 years for Wahyudi, Wahyu Wijaya, and Kurniadi, and a decade for Ahmad Suryono. The verdict revealed the chilling roles in the ultimate betrayal. Wahyu Wijaya and Wahyudi were the masterminds who planned the execution, but it was Kurniadi, the true executioner, who ended Gani's life by slamming a metal pipe into the back of his neck. It's a terrifying image for anyone. The realization that the people you knew, who finally chose to do the right thing and expose the lie, died in a sudden, violent flash, struck down by a blunt force trauma delivered by the very people he once considered family. There he sits again, the king of con men, the man who used the hollow promise of wealth to lure people like Abdul Ghani to their deaths, now basking in the reflected glow of his Patapokan, enjoying a conditional freedom that feels like a final, brutal mockery of true justice. The haunting lesson of this entire sick charade is that evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears the robes of a spiritual leader and exploits the deepest, most human craving for a shortcut to a better life. The tragedy isn't just that a good man was murdered and thrown into a reservoir. The tragedy is the unwavering faith in a known killer, a final, poignant warning that even the most definitive legal sentence means nothing when a con artist's power rests not on his innocence, but on the profound desperation of those he deceives. So we ask you, how many more times will we let the kings and crime lords who murder the honest men get away with their dark miracles? Don't let Abdul Ghani's life and death be forgotten. Like this video, share it with everyone who needs to be reminded that trust is earned, not bought, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the criminal underworld. Most importantly, drop a comment below and tell us, what is the real moral lesson of dimaskanjeng's return?